Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have you here. Just give us 10 minutes. We still have people walking in, parking and walking in, so in the next 10 minutes we will begin. Okay? We have a little treat for you this evening. Um, welcome to the Grosile Human Resource Center and the first in a series of town hall meetings by the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. My name is Dave Charles. I will be your moderator for this evening's meeting. We are really grateful for your presence this evening, and we know that more people are coming in. And to get this program underway, we would ask that you all join us as we pray to bring the presence of our Lord into this meeting this evening. So if everyone can stand, Ms. Bruce will lead us in prayer.
Heavenly Father, as we come together, we thank the Lord for this day. We thank thee for bringing us here where we can learn of our health. We thank you. We ask for your guidance in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you. All right. So this evening's meeting is the first in a series that the Millennium Heights Medical Complex will host. This is a new direction for the complex, and tonight you will learn a few things about the complex as well as some of the new programs and concepts that we have coming up. Interestingly, I will say that for a tertiary medical care center, this is a first in terms of these kinds of meetings within the community, as well as we're joining our friends and family from the environs of Grosile live on YouTube and on Facebook. This is a first for us as well. And after the meeting, your questions and the answers will be cataloged, repertoired, and used in our strategic development plan as we move forward with initiatives for the development of what we do at the Millennium Heights Medical Complex and some of the other services that we'll offer, which you will hear about. So just to bring some amusement and a little icebreaker to this evening's event, we invite Cokes from Cokes Production to lighten up the mood, and then we will get into the serious meat of the matter. I would like to recognize the presence of our CEO, Joanna Atherton Reynolds, our another director, Lisa Charles, and then our CEO, Dr. Dexter James. And now we invite Cokes.
Good night, good night. Good night. Pass you up by hot refreshment hot we born. Good night. Are you ready for the town hall? Are you ready for the town hall meeting? You know why you are here? Okay. So we have our town hall. Hold on. Iglesia. Bon du pa ka vini. Est la honeymoon la ben mon Iglesia? Yes, Iglesia, I told you to come. It's a very informative meeting. No, Iglesia, there's no refreshments. But they have water, and I see they have bags there. I put a bag bao. Because I have women shy bagay se munna. Mo kamade sa Iglesia, what they will talk about? Iglesia, I did just like you. And when I entered the door, se munna madame tell me question. What's your name? What's your email? So I'll tell them, no, Iglesia, that's not why they have that. Iglesia, the people are there already, you know. Who have toutes ces questions là? Yes, I have the questions. All of them, yes. How give them a whole notebook question? Yes, I have the question. But I have to go, Iglesia. I have to tell the people why we are here. No, call me back. Un bon bagay credit to upani check with you. So I fini ou pa isa kouye moi encore. Okay? No, Iglesia, miss. Iglesia, on sa parle. I am there ready at the meeting. So pa tell li bagay lan. No, Eglasia, hold on. I know I have it somewhere here. Pour qui ça c'est mon meeting ça? Est-ce que obligé à aller? I have it there. Eglasia, you are a typical St. Lucian. But my email, Eglasia, why we are here? Yes, I learned a lot already, Eglasia. Let me tell you that, Eglasia, they have a lot of people there. Nurse Frederick, yes. So see, la shy moon, and there's a lot to be learned tonight. Yes. Yeah. Eglasia, read the flyer. They send the flyer out. Everything is on the flyer. Oh, you just watched the pictures? And you did not read the information, Eglasia. But you had to read the information. Millennium, excusez-moi, Eglasia. But it's the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. No, pas couillé OEU Saugadia. OKEU Hospital. No, that's only part of it. Oui. But I have to go. Oui, monsieur Glacia, sous un vieux radio, ma cache to. Monsieur. But it's on the flyer, Glacia. The topics to be discussed: progress on the hospital services. Yes, development, update on secondary care hospital. Yes, it's right there. Glacia, you did not read the flyer? So just take a Vinicia et fais-moi couillon. But it's right here. It's a town hall meeting. No, there's no music. It's information. No Western, Eglasia. Only 2 hours. Very informative. And let me tell you, Eglasia, while I was in the back, c'est mouna di se première fois ça qu'a fait. That is the first of many. Le yo ka li kana ouvle la. Well, you could come, Eglasia, but I have to go. I really have to go. The people have to start. Moi Jessica baisse mon tie formation. One last one, what? But I just told you, Eglasia, what they will be doing here. Pour qui ça yo pa vlo kouye au OKEU? Because that is only part of the facility. We. Eglasia ou c'est un poupoule. Listen to me, Eglasia. Okay. The proper name for the facility is Millennium Heights Medical Complex. So do not, each time you tell me, Esma meeting, okay, EU. No, that is not it. The proper name for it is Millennium, but it's on the flyer, Heights Medical Complex. Yes. No, ça pas VH. Oh, that's another thing, Eglasia. I just learned something new. So when you talk about the complex, you're not only talking about the hospital. There are 4 facilities there. Monsieur. Eglasia, ou te pour really Vinicia, the presentation will be based on all of that. I didn't know myself. Oh, moi connais tout bagay, moi c'est un dictionary. Ou te lot kwa ka venir, but it is very important. Eglasia, listen to me. One of the things I got to know as I came here and I read the document they sent me, Eglasia. Do you know you cannot go and just sit down at VH? Ou pas just I mene call VH. You need to go through the facility and then you will be referred. Huh? Avant moun te ka ale la, c'est pas avant, is now. Is what, and that is why they are having the meeting tonight. There's a lot to be discussed. Eglasia, I am not the presenter, you know. Toutes ces questions, all of that will be said tonight. Yes. Now let me tell you, Eglasia, vite moi, toujours ka di moi, on est l'hôpital. Do you know at the Millennium Heights Medical Complex, Eglasia, there's 4 facilities which I spoke of. There is the OKEU Hospital, yeah, that's 1. Turning Point, yes. No, c'est pas la talk, Turning Point. Yes, it's Turning Point. Very well. There's a wellness center. And of course, if you take into consideration VH, yes, that is the secondary care, right, you could be referred to. So tonight, Eglasia, comment y est là? That is what is going to be discussed. Yes, CEOI. Yes. Oui, pas moi qui ka bay bagay. Eglasia will not be the presenter. No. The CEO himself. Say, the CEO is easy, because lower man dress like my dress. The 2 of us are well attired, Eglasia. So he's the first CEO, I'm the second CEO. But he's going to give a lot of information tonight. Moi là toujours devant ces moun nan iglesia avec ça ka di moi. Okay. Yes. Bye bye. Come on now, yeah, he's Dr. Dexter James, yeah. Yes. Non, pas docteur qui a fait l'opération Iglesia. He has a PhD. Why you Oh, bye Iglesia. Bye. Ouais, messieurs. So moi hope hot pas même kon Iglesia ou ça. Moi hope hot li bagay la. I hope you had a chance to read the flyer and understand why we are here. We are here to be educated. We are here, and of course, when it's your turn to ask questions, ask questions. Pas vin mande moi si zote you pete ko pou aller. No, because one of the topics they want that will be addressed and they want you to know tonight is we have our primary health care facilities, health center. Pas fait kon Iglesia an koutou coupe y vle mwen mene ou mene mwen l'hôpital neuf la. If you keep overcrowding the hospital like this, then the primary facilities will always be crowded, long waits. You understand what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying? Say muna wospe Iglesia ici ya. But we would like you to know tonight's town hall meeting is to educate the public, to let you know what exactly is happening at the Millennium Heights complex. You know, it's not just a hospital. And the approach, and this is the beginning of many more to come, to educate the public, to keep you enlightened, and to bring to your attention exactly what is happening there. Hot kopan? Hot commence ka weapon. But moi hope hot kai di lot moon and y'all whatever it is that was learned or is learned here tonight that we could spread it, right? Me say hot whisper Iglesia. Now, I do not want to take all the time here, but I want you to know tonight you are in good hands. I myself have me Iglesia ba ma whole file question pour me. Ma have see question moi ki ka ni presentation na, but she gave me a whole file of questions which I know will be answered tonight. So people listen, ask questions and be educated. Do not be an Iglesia. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cooks. Okay, so into this evening's presentation, we'll get a few brief remarks from our CEO, Joanna Reynolds Atherton. We will also invite our CEO, the chairperson, Joanna Atherton Reynolds Atherton, my apologies. And then our CEO, Dr. Dexter James, will give us a background on the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. He will also talk about the hospital services. We'll look at it at a glance, some key challenges that we face. We will look at our A&E, our accident and emergency services. He will update us on the developments at our secondary care hospital. And you heard Cooks mention that a little while ago. We will look at some strategic focuses, and then we will have the question and answer section. So at this time, to open up with a few brief remarks, we invite our chairperson, Joanna Reynolds Atherton.
Good evening, everyone. Okay. This meeting is really an effort to demonstrate public leadership and openness in the governance of the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. Meetings like these aim to engage the public on matters related to the operations of the complex and to glean insights, recommendations, and suggestions from the public on ways that the board and management can better serve your interests. In short, we believe that your voice counts. The intention is to bring power to the people, to find ways to allow the public to be part of the process of delivering improved services. We are hoping that to engage the public, to provide us with answers to some of the questions, because we do not know all the answers. Also, as the moderator indicated, you'll be hearing from the CEO, and members of his management team on the achievements and the challenges experienced at the complex during its short existence. The complex has only been in existence for some 2.5 years. And he'll also share with you some of the plans for the next 12 months. I want to just share with you a little about the board and the work of the board since it has come into being over the last 2 years. The board was installed just over 2 years ago, and it has been very busy understanding its governance roles and functions while addressing matters of strategy and policy development to guide the work of the management team. I want to give a few examples of what we have achieved thus far. First and foremost, there was the recruitment of the CEO. The CEO is fairly new, just about a year in office. The board actively pursued the recruitment of a CEO to manage the affairs of the MHMC and was successful in recruiting Dr. James sometime late October 2022. Dr. James brings to the complex a wealth of experience in managing hospitals across the region. He has been in this business for over 2 decades. He's a trained healthcare administrator, a professional accountant, and one of the leading experts in health reform in the region. The board was extremely fortunate and delighted to have him on board to support the work at this facility. Board governance. Well, since the appointment of the board, a number of standing committees have been established. These are what we call board committees. They lead on policy development and ultimately on management. These committees, we have a finance and audit committee, a staffing and compensation committee, and the quality and patient services committee. All of them are led by board members with support from subject matter experts from our management team. Hospital accreditation. One might ask, what is hospital accreditation? What is accreditation? In its very simplest form, accreditation is about standards of excellence, and in our case, it would be standards of excellence for delivering healthcare services or hospital services. So very early in the board's tenure, it was decided that a new model of care was needed to empower patients, families, and committees to improve the way services are delivered or are being delivered. So when the CEO and his management team presented the accreditation model that has as its base the promotion of people-centered care as the driver for change to support this approach to service delivery, without hesitation, the board agreed and granted approval for our enrollment with Accreditation Canada International, and that happened in December 2022. The CEO will tell you a lot more about our journey towards accreditation. There's also the development of the MHMC Secondary Care Hospital. Cox alluded to it. So as you're aware, the Respiratory Hospital, what was formerly the Victoria Hospital, so the Ministry of Health has established a Castries multi-purpose medical facility, and this facility will comprise the Castries Urban Polyclinic and Urgent Care Center and the Secondary Care Hospital. In that regard, the board has been entrusted with the development of the Secondary Care Hospital, which will provide additional beds for a select category of patients to complement the bed allocation at OKEU. So that will help alleviate the acute problem we have in terms of the shortage of beds in our hospital. So finally, I want to talk about the 24-hour hospital operations. So steps are being taken to restructure the clinical support services such as the lab, the X-ray department, and dispensing services towards a 24-hour operation. In that regard, we have completed the restructuring of the pharmacy operations and the X-ray department, and work is at an advanced stage of completing the same for the lab services. And we have also recruited staff, the recruitment of staff really is ongoing to support this 24-hour hospital operation arrangement. So just a snippet of what it is that the board has focused on and has achieved in the last 24 months. And at this point, I want to hand you over to the moderator, and the CEO will be introduced to tell you a lot more about those initiatives that I've just touched on. Thank you for your attention and time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Reynolds Atherton, our chairperson of the Board of Directors. As the chairperson indicated, she has most graciously given her okay on a number of initiatives, including our customer or patient care center, and you will hear about that through the CEO's speech. So at this time, we like to call on our CEO, Dr. Dexter James, who will make a presentation, and you could just focus this way as we take you through some slides. And after this, you will be able to ask your questions, and we will get the answers for you. Okay, so we invite our CEO, Dr. Dexter James.
Thank you, Mr. Charles. Pleasant good afternoon to the residents of Grosse-Île. Thank you for meeting with us this afternoon for us to speak with you on a number of topical areas of the facing the Millennium Medical Heights complex. This afternoon, my presentation will focus on giving you a sense of who or what we are as the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. I will share with you our hospital services at a glance, so you get a sense of what we really do at the Millennium Heights Medical Complex, some of our challenges. I know the Accident and Emergency Department is an area of particular concern, not only here in St. Lucia, but all over the region, particularly because it's a fairly charged environment. We'll update you on government's move towards the repurposing of the respiratory hospital as a multi-purpose medical facility, and I will then share with you what our strategic focus will be for service development enhancement. This evening really is all about you. I come to you this evening with a sense of sincerity and truth, and therefore that is the spirit in which I would like us to dialogue. Our board thrives on the value of openness in the way we discuss and our business at the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. The art form of governance itself is about accountability to the people. We're not accountable to ourselves. We are accountable to the people who fund this hospital, and therefore meetings of this kind are very important as part of building that relationship between the hospital and the community. So indeed this afternoon we're demonstrating the art of public leadership in the way we're going to develop the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. Still very much a young institution, but this is the way we hope to develop it going forward, by engaging the population so we hear from you in ways in which we could better serve you. A quick sense of who or what we are.
Did you know that Millennium Heights Medical Complex comprises a hospital, mental health institution, and a rehabilitation center? When the COVID-19 pandemic started in 2020, Victoria Hospital's operations were moved to the building of the OMP Hospital and was then merged with the National Mental Wellness Center and Turning Point Rehabilitation Center into one organization now known as Millennium Heights Medical Complex, or MHMC. This was guided by the Millennium Heights Medical Complex Act of 2015, which officially allows for the government to set up MHMC and its responsibility for its administration, management, and organization, led by a board of directors. Together, these three institutions on one compound now offer the widest range of services in the country, making MHMC St. Lucia's main healthcare institution. Call MHMC at 458-6500 or 458-6700, or you can email information at mhmc@mhmc.org. for more. Follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn for updates at Millennium Heights Medical Complex and on Instagram at Millennium Heights Medical.
So this just gives you a snippet of the Millennium Heights Medical Complex, how we evolved, and the facilities that are on campus. This is what the campus looks like today. It is built around a helping hand with only 4 of the 5 fingers built. There are 4 fingers, as you see on this slide, 2 wings with 2 floors, and 2 wings with 3 floors. The next couple of slides give you a sense of the hospital services at a glance in terms of the throughput and activity. We are the complex. There's the OKU Hospital. There's 122 beds. There's the National Mental Wellness Center of 103 beds. And there's the Turning Point Rehabilitation Center with 8 beds. We provide a 24-hour emergency and inpatient services, general and surgical subspecialty services with 4 operating theaters, internal medicine, medical subspecialties in oncology, nephrology, cardiology, psychiatry, etc., pediatrics. A wide menu of medical services are available at the complex. Key data sets and metrics. And this is another did you know moment, because sometimes we feel that the facility is there and you don't have a sense as to what is the kind of outputs that take place at that facility. Today, your facility admits over 6,000 patients. We provide at least 15,000 outpatient visit services. A&E, or accident emergency department, sees about 18,000 patients a year. We do about 1,900 surgeries per year, and we have about 94, just under 100 patients today on hemodialysis services. Our dialysis services run from about 7 in the morning right back until 2, 3 in the a.m. Sorry, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. So it's a fairly busy facility. We make sure that all patients receive the 3 and 4 hours of treatment so that care is not compromised at all. In terms of our diagnostic and therapeutic services, we process about 19,000 imaging studies, just over 500,000 laboratory investigations. We fill about 15,000 prescriptions, and we do about 15,000 physiotherapy treatments. This slide gives you a sense of what I call the happiness factor or happiness indicator of the constituents we serve. On a daily basis, we have patient executives filling out questionnaires in 3 settings: outpatient clinics, inpatient settings, and at the accident and emergency department. We have semi-structured questions we ask patients, and they provide us with the feedback. That information feeds into a business intelligence software that we have that generates this information for us. So it's a fairly independent study. And this is what the population of St. Lucia is saying about the services we provide. They believe that we are about 3.7 in terms of the rating of care. And perhaps the most significant feature in this is the 75% Net Promoter Score. And what that Net Promoter Score is, it is persons who will promote the hospital versus those persons who will demote it. In other words, we ask persons, how likely are you to recommend the OKEUH to your friend or relative? And 3 out of 4 persons says they will recommend patients to the hospital. Now, this is not us doing it. This is the patients that we see in our inpatients, outpatients, and the accident emergency department. So we're not doing too badly. Can we do better? Of course we can do better, right? And this is why we're here, to hear from you so we could get better at what we do. But this gives us a sense of the level of satisfaction of the population with respect to the services we currently provide. The presentation will be short-handed if I don't share with you what our expenditure profile is today. For the package of services we currently provide, we expend close to $90 million to deliver that service to you. $90 million of the taxpayers' dollars is used to deliver the package of services to yourselves. And so this provides an indication of the profile of the expenditure. You would see, of course, the largest chunk of it is in payroll. Material and supplies, about 19%. The figure under consulting and contracting services, we do in fact have a lease reagent contract for patients on dialysis, and that is a big ticket item for us, all right? But this gives you a sense of the expenditure profile for the institution. So it is not surprising that we have meetings of this kind. If you're spending $90 million of the taxpayers' dollar, you must have a say as to how the services are delivered firstly, and how satisfied you are with respect to those services. And we really want to hear from you this afternoon. What are some of our challenges? Well, we have issues relating to shortage of our nurses. There's no secret that our nurses are leaving. Of course, we see the attrition is at a declining rate now this year. It's not as aggressive as we saw it last year. But certainly, if we have shortage of nurses, care at some point in time is likely to be compromised. We have high inpatient bed occupancy level, and that simply is that all our beds are fully occupied. Fully occupied. So what happens is that patients come today for the surgery, there are no beds, and unfortunately we have to cancel the surgery. It is not an ideal situation, but later in the presentation I'll share with you how we hope to at least remedy that situation going forward. The third bullet speaks about care provided in the wrong setting. When primary medical condition presents to our accident and emergency department, and we have to divert resources to take care of non-urgent care, it therefore affects the performance of the accident and emergency department. All right? So we estimate that about 25% of the patients who come through the accident and emergency department really should be in a different setting of care, either at a private facility or preferably at one of our well-distributed polyclinics across this country. No shows for appointments at our outpatient clinics. Today I was speaking to my director of clinical services, and she was sharing with me some data. This is an area of serious concern for us. 3 out of 10 patients that we book for appointments in our outpatient clinics don't show up. No shows. In spite of us calling them 24 hours, sometimes 48 hours before, to remind them of the clinics, 30% or 3 out of 10 patients who are booked for appointments don't show up for their appointments. This we see as a waste in hospital resources, because then these patients either have to be rescheduled or the condition get into a catastrophic state and then they present to our emergency department in a very ill and critical condition. So we're asking the members of the public, when your outpatient appointments are set, we're asking you to show up for your appointments. We know exigencies and there are problems that might arise, but 3 out of 10 persons not showing up for their appointments is really, really a waste of resources. Of course, the financing model, we're still evolving a new model of financing to make sure we can sustain the services. And of course, the incomplete transfer of staff from the former respiratory hospital, Millennium Heights Medical Complex, is still ongoing and incomplete. One of the challenges facing our public health system today is the continued widening gap between the demand for and cost of health services and the supply of resources. And what that means is this. When we look on the supply side, these resources either come from the consolidated fund, from donor aid, or from revenues that we collect. Those amounts are either remaining the same or declining. But when we look at the demand for and cost of health services, it continues to escalate. So here is a situation where the supply side is remaining more or less constant and the demand continues to increase. This widening gap creates problems of sustainability for our public health system. And you might ask, what is driving this demand for and cost of services? Well, the first is the disease and sickness profile. The change in, we have an aging population, the NCDs, the emergence of communicable disease, the new public health normal of injuries from accidents and violence. All these are challenges that pose a serious burden to the limited resources that we have. In the same way that the tourism sector is recognizing pent-up travel post-COVID, we are now seeing pent-up sickness post-COVID. Patients who ordinarily will go and get their checks are now presenting with stage 3 and 4 cancers. Persons who were pre-diabetic are now coming fully blown diabetics. Persons who were pre-hypertensive are now presenting in a fully hypertensive mode, high blood pressure. So it's not surprising today that all the emergency rooms across our region are packed with patients, most of them with the non-communicable diseases. It's a serious public health issue. There are some factors that are outside our control that we call exogenous factors. We do not control the cost of drugs and medical supplies, and therefore we are forced to be price takers. In other words, whatever the manufacturers say those prices are, we have to pay for the cost of drugs and supplies at that price. So we don't control that cost at all. So 17 to 20% of our budget is in a cost line that we have no control over. If the manufacturer said the cost of the item is $15, we have no choice but to buy it at $15 because we can't manufacture drugs and supplies in this part of the world. Advancing technology and technology refresh. We have to prepare ourselves to make sure that our plant is kept modern, and so that requires a heavy injection of capital on almost 4 to 5 years. You're constantly refreshing the plant to make sure we have a plant that is modern and safe to use. The other systemic factors of malpractice coverage, overuse of diagnostics, medical errors, care provided in the wrong setting. Today, we spend just under $650,000 for malpractice insurance. We have to carry it. One item, $650,000 we spend per annum for our malpractice insurance. We must carry it because healthcare workers are not infallible. Things can go wrong. And in the event that there are errors that creates problems, we have our malpractice insurance to cover us in those eventualities. Other contributors are high public expectations. A lot of our populations are watching ER and Dr. House, and therefore they come into us and say, well, I saw it on TV, so why we can't have it here? So that there's this disquiet as to what we see in the metropolitan countries, we should replicate it here. Those expectations are real, and people are, populations are traveling and seeing what is available in first world countries, and they expect the same to be provided here. So let me now turn to our Accident and Emergency Department. Our Accident and Emergency Department sees an average of about 1,500 patients per month. And this is a trend for the last, say, 6 months. When patients come into the Accident and Emergency Department, the department does something called triage. And sometimes it's not well understood. So to bear with me tonight, I just want to kind of share with you what the triage process is. And I expect all of you here tonight to be agents of change, to educate the population on what this thing about triage is. So let's suppose we have 5 patients who present to the emergency room today. Patient number 1 comes in with a runny nose. This is patient number 1. Patient number 1 comes in with runny nose. First patient. Number 2 comes in with an upset stomach. That's number 2. Patient number 3 comes in with excruciating headache for the whole day. You're not sure what it is, but they present our emergency room. Patient number 4 comes in this order with stab wounds. And patient number 5 comes in with a motor vehicle accident, bang up terribly. What triage really does is, if this is the order in which patients arrive, very specialized nursing staff will make a call as to who will be seen first in order of medical condition. So obviously the person who came in a vehicle accident, came in last, will be seen first. Y'all getting where I'm coming from? The person who came in with the stab wound, came in 5th, will be seen second. The person who came in 3rd with the excruciating headache, we ain't really sure if this is a query stroke taking place. So we got to see them 3rd. These are outliers. They could go home, but nevertheless, we'll see them because they present our room. We will see the one with the upset stomach next. Oh, runny nose. Come.
Been here since 8.
Pitch it 4. And the last we see is 5th. You all understand the triage process now? So it is not how you come in, but it's the severity of the condition that the nurse now orders you in terms of your disease profile. The sicker ones will be seen first, and the less sick ones will be seen later on. The problem that we have is, these 2 folks that came in first are the ones who stay for the 3 hours. And they expect to be seen on a first-come, first-served basis. But that is not how the accident emergency department functions. Patients are triaged based on the severity and the urgency of your medical condition. So I hope this little demonstration will kind of share with you that the order in which you come into the emergency room is not necessarily the order in which you will be seen. You'll be seen in order of the urgency of your medical condition. So those persons who have upset stomach and runny nose, these are conditions that could be better seen at our polyclinics. And these are the ones that will spend the 3 and the 4 hours sometimes waiting for care. Because all our nursing resources now have to be put into this group because it's a life-threatening condition that we have to take care of first before we deal with the non-life-threatening conditions. All right, thank you very much. So today your emergency department sees about 1,500 patients per month. We put them in order of what they call the ASI category. It's just a triage category as just described to you. Category 1 and 2 are your most severe life-threatening. Category 3 patients are the one who comes in with the excruciating headaches that we're not sure what it is. And category 4 and 5 are those who can find care in a different setting. We measure waiting times between the time you walk in the door, to the time a nurse sees you. And we also measure the time between you walk into A&E to the time a doctor sees you. The targets on the bottom gives you a sense of what our target times are. You would see that category 1 and 2, there's hardly any issue with those patients. You come in gunshot wound, straight to operating theater, care is provided right away. Category 4 and 5, you would see from the time you walk in to the time you triage, we take an average of between 30 to 45 minutes to take care of you. Door-to-doctor times, again, you would see category 4 and 5, which are non-emergent cases, they spend on an average under 2 hours, which is not too bad, all right, in any emergency setting, because these are patients who ordinarily should be in a different setting of care. We have this phenomena of what we call boarded patients, and this is one of our challenges today. Because we don't have beds to move patients from the accident emergency department to the wards, these patients are all on cots and stretchers in the emergency department waiting for beds. On an average, we have between 20 and 25 patients daily waiting for beds that we don't have. About 2 weeks ago, we had just under 50 patients, believe it or not. 50 patients were waiting in the emergency room to be admitted, no beds. So this is our new normal. It is a very vexing issue for us. It is a very challenging issue for us. And we hope that with the opening up of the secondary care hospital, we'll be able to provide some additional beds that might relieve the burden of the bed management crisis that we have. So the key challenges faced by the emergency department is, of course, the bed crisis. Victoria at the time had 150 beds. We are down to 120. So you already lost 30 beds. Longer wait times to non-urgent care, and care provided in the wrong setting. That is to say, the runny nose and the upset stomach really should be going to our primary care facilities as opposed to coming to the emergency department. A bit of the Millennium Heights Medical Complex Secondary Care Hospital. Government took the decision that they will repurpose the respiratory hospital as an integrated healthcare approach called a Castries Multipurpose Medical Facility. I like to define it as one facility, 3 services. One facility, 3 services. And what those 3 services would be? There would be the Castries Urban Polyclinic, which will provide a wide range of primary medical services. There's going to be an urgent center, and the facility that will be given to us is the secondary care hospital. This facility will have a 10 beds and 2-bedded ICU in the chest wing. We will have something like 31 additional beds. We will have X-ray facilities, laboratory services, and inpatient dispensing services. So we're currently developing the facility as a secondary care facility to be able to transition patients from the OKEUH hospital to the secondary care facility. Spend too much time on that. Where we are today. We've today transitioned 85 staff from the former respiratory hospital to the facility. We've installed an officer in charge. We've since started to transfer patients across. We now have 7 patients now at the chest wing. We have commenced remediation works to the wards and facility to modernize it and bring it to a good sense of repair so that patients will feel comfortable when they go into those facilities. We're currently assessing the plumbing installations, and we're seeking to have a phase commissioning of the first phase of Ward 9, 12 beds and dispensing services by mid-November. We're about 70% completed in that project, and in a couple of weeks we should be ready to now have an additional 12 beds to move patients from either the accident and emergency department or inpatient facilities. What is our focus for service quality and enhancement to you, the people of St. Lucia? We have embraced the people-centered care, which is a model adopted by the World Health Organization that speaks to an approach that consciously adapts individuals, carers, families, and communities' perspectives. The key words are as participants in and beneficiaries of. Far too often when patients come to our public health system, we don't take their concerns into consideration at all. We are caregivers, take it or leave it. What this patient-centered care approach is saying, that you must have a say in the way services are delivered and must be an active participant in the delivery of your services. That's a fundamental change in the model. So the model speaks to providing care in partnership with client and family and with input from clients and families. A fundamental shift from the way we were delivering services before. Simple approaches. Identify yourself to the patient. Say your name, what is your occupation, and what duty you're going to perform to the patient. Simple. Treat patients with respect and dignity. Embrace patients in the delivery of the care. They're not statistics. Be concerned about pain management. Be concerned about providing psychosocial support to patients. Newly diagnosed patient with breast cancer. Do we ever consider this patient is going through trauma? How do we move them from anger, denial, right up to the point of acceptance? Do we ever write a prescription that says, I want to refer this patient to see the psychologist? We don't. We just say to you, I gotta do a mastectomy. Let me see you on Monday at the theater, and we just operate. That is not people-centered care. We gotta go much further than that. People-centered care is about compassionate care and giving consideration to the plight of patients. This is a fundamental shift to the way we've been practicing medicine, not only here, across the region. But we are adopting this people-centered care as an important feature as to how we're going to transform the delivery of services within the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. Our focus and commitments to the population are as follows. We committed to continue to pursue hospital accreditation. And next year, we should be subjecting ourselves to a formal survey to have our facilities accredited by an international body. We will seek to improve the patient care experience across the board. There's too much times we have patients moving, waiting, transportation. These are all in the science of lean methodology, inefficient ways on managing our system. So we're going to have to find ways of eliminating the movement of our patients in trying to create now one-stop shops for the delivery of services. We'll strengthen our procurement function and minimize stockouts. We'll improve our wait times at the emergency department across the board. We've done fairly well. We can do better. We'll put in place regulations for admitting privileges for surgeons. And what that means is two theaters at the secondary care hospital, we are developing those as private facilities. So by giving doctors in the private sector admitting privileges, they're able to bring their patients into the hospital, use our theaters, of course for a fee, and then follow the patient post-op. This is perhaps one of the more unique models in our public health system, where there will be no commingling of public and private patients being done in the same facility. All private work will be done at the secondary care hospital, including the doctors who work at the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. They will be given the privilege to do that as well. We'll commission the secondary care hospital. We'll develop hospital philanthropy as a special purpose vehicle for raising capital funding to make sure that we could have funding to keep the plan current and that we don't have obsolescence hitting us. We'll strengthen our admissions, billings, and collections function. You come into the main entrance today, and you will see we have a nice corporate office. Patients who are required to be admitted electively can go to the office and transact, make sure they prepay. If you can't pay, we put in place payment plans so that you could receive your care in time. So you could transact your business with a measure of confidentiality and privacy. We'll establish the Patient Advocacy Committee as a voice to the public. This, we feel, is a very important feature of giving our constituents a voice that ordinarily patients feel disempowered. So we want to set up this Patient Advocacy Committee that is not part of our governance structure at all. It's an independent entity out there that would represent the voice of the public. If they have concerns, they can go to that entity and the concerns will be sent on to us. It doesn't take away from the fact that you can lodge your complaints to us directly, But in small societies, you find that the population have concerns as to whether the future care will be compromised. So you say, you know what, I must suffer in silence because I ain't really sure if I complain now, what will happen to me. What we say now is, through this patient advocacy committee, patients must now have an opportunity to lodge the complaint with this body, and then the complaint will be sent on to us for investigation. So we're really putting power back into the hands of patients to give them a voice, ordinarily where they would be voiceless. So that is the end of my presentation, and our board and management will be happy to field questions on the presentation, any clarification that you would want to have, and I thank you for giving me this audience. Thank you.
Okay, good evening again. Thank you, Dr. James. Any questions from the audience? We have a few questions from online. How does one get admitted into the secondary care hospital when the Castries Polyclinic is there? Yeah. Sure. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're streaming live right now on YouTube and Facebook, and we've got a few questions from online. One of the questions this evening from online is, how does one get admitted into the secondary care hospital when the Castries Polyclinic is there?
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that question. Let me just clarify the secondary care hospital. A secondary care hospital doesn't mean that you're receiving second-class care. It's not second-class care at all. There are 3 levels of care. Primary care, which is with polyclinics and health centers, secondary care, and what we provide at the OKUH is what we call tertiary care, the most sophisticated level of care. So secondary care is just a different level of care that is provided in the overall continuum of care. The move for patients at the urgent center will be driven by dedicated protocols for patient transfer. So if a patient goes to the urgent center when it is commissioned, and then the patient is deserving of admissions, based on the protocols we'll define, the patient could either be admitted directly to the secondary care hospital or can be sent to the OKUH hospital. What we don't want to happen is patients moving from the urgent center to OKUH to be seen by the doc to then decide you really belong to the secondary care. This movement of patients, we have to guard against it, and therefore the entry point will be patients are seen and under the very strict protocol that we have in place can be admitted directly to the secondary care hospital or to the Millennium or to the OKUH hospital. But all of that will be driven by clinical protocols and clinical practice guidelines between the doctor, the referring doctor in the urgent center, and our accident and emergency consultant.
Anyone from the audience before we take the second question online? Okay. So we have a second question.
Such as?
Oh, we have a question.
Hi, good evening. I was wondering whether you could tell us a little bit more about the hospitals or the facilities aftercare services. Just say a little bit more about this, because I assume the care does not end after the patient is discharged.
Right. Very good question. You're hitting on the heart of what we call proper discharge planning. When patients are discharged from the hospital, they're given a discharge note or discharge summary, and they're required to take that summary to the primary care facility for what we call continuity of care. Does it happen? Is it happening? It's not happening to the level of detail that we require. And how are we going to address that? We are going to set up a multidisciplinary discharge planning committee comprising the hospital, and we'll invite our primary care colleagues to sit there so we could work out those protocols. In more advanced settings, when patients are discharged, they're discharged to a catchment area. So if you belong to the Grosselet catchment area, a copy of your medical summary is sent to the Grosselet Center. So there's continuity of care. The continuity of care needs to be strengthened. I have to admit that. Because we discharge patients, and sometimes we don't do enough to find out what the home setting is like, for instance. All right? Whether the caregiver for continuity of care has been sufficiently informed, whether they in fact take the summary to the primary care facility. They go back to the primary care facility and they're asking them, so what did they do at the hospital? I don't know. Did they not give you a discharge summary? I didn't know that was a discharge summary. So that creates problems relating to what we call continuity of care. Because the catchment area or the facility that is the primary care facility do not have a summary of the care provided to you at the hospital. So it's an area that requires improvement, and we're working towards that. Yeah.
Okay, so we have another question from online. It says, given the size of the hospital, it's surprising to hear about the issues related to the availability of beds. Can you please explain the reasons behind the bed shortage and insufficiency?
Well, the Millennium Heights Medical Complex is on a lot more real estate than the former Victoria Hospital. That's the first point. The entire complex, as I shared with you a while ago, is on a lot more real estate than the former Victoria Hospital. That's the first point I'd like to make. The second point I'd like to make is the OKEUH Hospital has been developed as a tertiary care facility, and what that means is that it is providing a wider range of services relative to Victoria Hospital. Much wider range. And I encourage all of you to visit the hospital. Physiotherapy, dialysis, in terms of the entire, just the layout and the ergonomics of where care is provided. It's totally different. The imaging department is now providing a wider range of imaging services relative to the old facility. But perhaps more importantly, as I shared in one of the slides, you're moving from 150 beds to a facility now with 120 beds. Much smaller facility. Why it was built smaller, I cannot prefer a response, but what I can tell you is that hospital architects and planners, when they build in hospitals today, it is built on the assumption that your primary care networks are working well. So the numbers of beds that is required is far less. If primary care, therefore, does not function well, then immediately a facility will be too small, which is what we see now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Anybody from the audience? Yes?
Yeah, thanks very much for having this community outreach. I have just 2 questions for now. I'm happy to hear that you will be putting together the discharge summary for patients who have left the hospital, but I think immediately and as part of it, the patient should be given copies of their lab results. Any investigations and labs, they should walk with it. And the other question is, what's your policy and procedure in terms of patients viewing their medical records and getting copies of that?
Well, I have my director of clinical services here. I know she's feeling very lonely, so I will ask her to come and answer that question tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out. So let me take your second question first, Dr. Centros. The policy for release of medical records, the patient simply has to visit our medical records department, sign a consent for release of their records. Their records belong to them, but there is a process to ensure that we are good guardians of the records and that they're not handed to anyone. So the patient does have to present with an ID. There is a fee for photocopying, and the records will be released. If the patient can't themselves present, then they can have a letter of authorization prepared and send their ID with that letter of authorization. Your first question, well, it wasn't a question, yes, sending the labs. What would be wonderful is when we are networked as a health system through an electronic patient record that speaks across the island to the private office, to the polyclinics, and to the hospitals, because obviously printing off records and handing them to patients is not ideal. Even if you give copies, sometimes they don't remember to bring it. So I think what we need to aim for, I agree with you 100%, that patients should have records of their, not only their lab studies, but their any radiology, x-ray studies, ultrasounds available to them when they leave. But what we really need to be working towards is an electronic patient record that networks the entire health system on the island, so that once you have your patient's ID number, you can plug it into a system and you can pull up all the records that are pertinent to that patient.
All right, thank you, Dr. Charles. Let me just recognize a couple persons here who you may not know. Dr. Campbell Louisy, private physician, is a member of our board. I want you to recognize him. Dr. Campbell Louisy is here with us. I also have here with me this afternoon my Director of Finance and Budget, Mr. Roger Ingley. He's here with us this afternoon. I also have Sister Isabel Parrott, who is our Deputy Director of Nursing Services. She's here with us as well. And we have our Human Resource Consultant, Mrs. Euriska Chandler, who is here with us as well. Welcome.
Hello, good night.
Good night, sir.
Great idea to have this event, and I congratulate the complex for doing this. I have a couple of questions. Is there a national health policy that guides the activities, for lack of a better word, or the thrusts of the complex? And some of the things that are driving this question, for example, is the incidence of NCDs. Okay? I think you pointed out that it's a very serious problem, not just in St. Lucia, but across the Caribbean. And I'm wondering if you can give us a sense of what the national incidence of NCDs is, because I imagine the complex does not receive all of the patients who present with these illnesses at various private and public health facilities. So the question about the broad health policy, I think it's important for us to know if that exists and to what extent that is informing the work that you do, so that we have some sense of what the gaps are in terms of the overall health facility. That's the first question I had. And I wanted to know what is the nature of the functional relationship that exists between the complex and other health facilities around the country. St. Jude's, for example, the polyclinic, and so on. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Springer. the Millennium Heights Medical Complex has been established by statute, and therefore we pretty much function as a standalone, independent facility with its own governance structure. There's a board of directors and there's a management team. Still only 2 years in its operation, the link between the Millennium Heights Medical Complex and the national agenda is usually preserved between what we call a service level agreement. That is not yet in place. And what that agreement spells out is the services that we as providers will provide in consideration of the budgetary provisions that the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Finance will provide to us. That is what creates the link to make sure that the Millennium Heights Medical Complex is not operated outside of a wider policy framework or strategic framework. That is still very much incomplete. In much more developed systems of decentralized governance, it is extremely tight. It starts with what is called a purchasing intention, where the Ministry of Health will send to the board. These are the services we like to buy from you in the year. Our management will put together a plan and we submit it to the ministry, and then a conversation takes place, and then we reconcile. This is the package of services that you will buy, and this is what we will deliver for the budget. That has not happened as yet. So we pretty much are developing our own strategic direction outside of a framework of the national agenda. So we're very careful not to go too far into it. We haven't yet developed our own strategic plan, so our strategic focus is built around intelligence that we're gathering from our own understanding of the health situation within the hospital and the country. We take information from feedback from satisfaction surveys, and we review other policy documents such as, WHO mandates, and we build our plan around that. But admittedly, it is not a plan that is developed within a national context. For that to happen, there must be a national strategic plan for health. I think the ministry is now working on that. And it is out of that national strategic plan for health that those deliverables that are linked to the complex will be then passed on to us for execution. So we're hoping that we shouldn't be too far along in our journey before that question of service level agreements and so are put in place, because we could have a disconnect between our particular role as a tertiary care facility and certainly what the national agenda is. At this stage, there's no connection between the primary care facilities and the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. That, again, is another systemic deficiency. And this is why I mentioned earlier on about the discharge planning committee. We really want to start to bring primary care together with us. It's an interesting feature that we see in these new governance arrangement. Should we have gone with an integrated model with primary care and secondary care in one governance arrangement? Or, as we've seen in our case, we've gone with a hospital reform. There are arguments for and against both models. Will hospital services develop at the expense of primary care? If we're not careful, that could potentially happen and create more chaos. Perhaps this is something that we need to do a retrospective study. COVID says begin with the end in mind. If a lot of the patients we now see coming to our emergency room are with NCDs, then one has to really question what is really happening out there. We're not blaming anybody, but let's look at the data. The data is showing that our populations are getting sicker and sicker. And if we don't address this phenomena, in the next decade, we're going to have to build another OKU. We're not going to have enough beds. We're not going to have enough beds. When you look at the sickness profile, the heart problems, heart attacks, the injuries from accidents and violence, and the communicable diseases, if we don't arrest this right away, then we're going to have a much bigger problem in our hands. This phenomena is not only unique to St. Lucia. A lot of our islands in the OECS and beyond are facing a similar problem. Bermuda went with hospital reforms when they reformed their system at the expense of primary care. Spent a lot of money recapitalizing the hospital. Today, now, they're reaping the misfortune of not doing an integrated system. Because the primary care system now is coming home to roost and is creating a lot of problems with the system. If you look to see where countries have only gone with hospital reforms, you would see that the level of incidence and prevalence of the NCDs is much higher because we lack that seamlessness in the program. If primary care facilities were under the Millennium Heights Medical Complex, we could make changes at the primary care level to make sure we deal with the patients presenting in the wrong setting. We have no local standard, no authority in primary care. All we could do is use moral suasion and ask them to come, let's have a talk, and let's see how we could try and fix the system. So I take the point that the national agenda needs to now define where the Millennium Heights Medical Complex fit into the overall scheme of care provision. We need to tighten up the contractual relationship between the Ministry of Health and ourselves in terms of service provision. And we need to establish a framework that allows for that seamlessness between primary, secondary, and tertiary care within a national policy framework.
Okay,
thank you.
Our final two questions. Anyone who has any other questions can email it to communications@mhmc.lc. That's communications@mhmc.lc.
Yeah, thank you. Let me say kudos to you and your team, Doc, for putting on this presentation. I think it's way overdue, and I think it comes maybe, I would say, at the right time. On this matter, I would also say, I think you should be considering if the intention is to take it around the island or to have that outreach. Definitely, we would need to have it at least bilingual or an explanation. Someone at least, if we're going down, as we would say, to the west coast, north, not taking away anything from the, in the south, not taking anything away from it, but some explanations would definitely be needed as we go along. And secondly, my second question is, with the advent of all what that I've heard and all what has happened at the complex, and now that we are here in what was the former respiratory hospital, PH is being transferred into, to quote your own words, one facility but 3 services. Yeah. What would you say, are we in a better position? Should, in case, and I'm not calling on it, but are we in a better position, should we, in case, face another pandemic?
Yeah. It's a good question. By the way, I don't think you dressed much better than I tonight, so let me just get that out of the way first of all. But it's a good question, because when the COVID pandemic hit our countries, many countries had to repurpose facilities, spend a lot of capital to bring them to a stage where you could manage these patients. WHO has now declared COVID no longer a disease of international concern, So the question countries are faced with, we now have all this capital What do we do with the capital? So in the case of St. Lucia, the view was, let us now repurpose that entire complex into this one facility, 3 services concept as I've raised. The secondary care component has been transferred to us, including what was referred to as the chest wing, where all infectious cases were being managed. So part of our game plan is we're using those facilities for patient care in the unlikely event that there's not going to be another pandemic or communicable disease. If it turns out that there's another pandemic, the facilities are going to have to be repurposed for that particular use. This is perhaps the flexibility that countries now have to be able now to repurpose very quickly. So while I'm here speaking about beds for secondary care and we can move patients across and it will ease the burden in A&E, in the unlikely event that a pandemic does in fact hit us again, we'll have to suspend sending patients to the facility and repurpose it for dealing with communicable diseases. Luckily for us, the chest wing, which is 12 beds, is away from the rest of the secondary care hospital. So if we have, for instance, 2 patients today or 3 patients today who are infected, we could safely manage them in the chest wing and continue with the rest of the hospital. We are going to put in that chest wing 2 ICUs. So we don't even need to move those patients into an ICU bed. So that 12-bedded unit is going to be 10 beds for infectious cases and a 2-bedded ICU. If, however, when the 11th patient come in, then we have a problem. We now have to use the secondary care facility. So we still have some safeguards within the overall framework because the chest wing is away from the remaining 31 beds that we have as Ward 9 and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I said if we have 2, 3, 4, 5, we'll use the chest wing. If patients require resuscitation, we have the ICUs right there. We don't have to bring them upstairs. But when the 11th patient come in, then we have a problem. We're not going to have to use the secondary care. So that's how I respond to you.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
There's been complaints that the hospital has been running out of essential supplies and so on. And I wanted to know what steps are being taken to remedy that at this moment and in the near term.
It's a good question. Let me just share with you how drugs and medical supply comes to our public health system. There's a central procurement unit that procures drugs and medical supply for the entire public health system of St. Lucia, including the OKUH and the complex. When on occasion, central procurement is not able to procure the drugs and supplies, either by virtue of the supply chain doesn't have the drugs or their financial issues, the entire public health system crashes to a halt. And in particular, the Millennium Heights Medical Complex, because we are a tertiary care facility. I am not saying that sometimes the stockouts that we have is not also due to our own slothfulness and internal inefficiency. But by and large, it is due to the fact that the central procurement agency doesn't have the drugs. So what we've had to do is that we said, look, we cannot continue to have the goodwill of the institution being impaired by something we have no control over. So what we have done is that we've used our limited resources to purchase what we call the vital, essential, and necessary drugs required to support the patients that we have at the hospital. And we've been building up our supplies over the last 3 months. So I'm not sure if anyone has had a recent experience, but I can share with you, we've now opened back our outpatient clinics in the dispensing area. In July, we filled 287 prescriptions. In August, we filled 340 prescriptions. And in September, we filled 590 prescriptions. So patients now, once a prescription is given to them, they go to the outpatients department, pay for their medication, and they now have the medication. So this is how we're seeking to address it. We haven't advertised it because we just really wanted to ease it in slowly without creating any fanfare. We started in July, and word is in fact getting out, and we now see the numbers are climbing from July to August to September. This is how we hope to deal with it. So we are going to buy our buffer stock and have it there at the hospital. So in the unlikely event that central procurement doesn't come good, we can now draw on our buffer stocks to make sure that patients have the drugs that they require. This was an agonizing experience for our board, very agonizing. It's not easy to hear that patients are given a prescription and are told go to pharmacy A outside to get it filled. Really, really, really agonizing. So I am particularly happy that Dr. Charles and the pharmacy group has been able to sit together and work with Roger and finance and work out an arrangement to be able to have put aside some resources to have these buffer stocks to be able to keep the system going. We hope to sustain it, and we'll continue to. It is working well. We've seen the evidence of the numbers are climbing, and we hope to be able to keep that going until, if in the event that central procurement is not able to address this question of the drugs and stock out. A very sore point for us, but we've seen a light at the end of the tunnel. Our management has responded to it, and we've seen since July to now how the number of prescriptions have keep climbing. We expect by the end of the year, I believe we'll be close to being filling 1,000 prescriptions by the end of the year. Good. That guy down there and there. Thank you, Dr. Louisi, for that. Dr. Louisi is a member of our Quality and Patient Services Committee and has been the champion for having the hospital truly run on a 24-hour basis. And what that means is that our diagnostic and therapeutic groups, our pharmacy, our labs, and our imaging must resource itself with people so that we don't have this on-call arrangement in place at all. So we looked at the pharmacy first, and we know that we now need 8 pharmacists to be able to run a truly 24-hour arrangement. We've been having some challenge in recruiting the pharmacists, but as soon as we get to that number, we'll have our pharmacy running 24/7. Our imaging department currently runs up to midnight with no on-call arrangement. As of now, there's a radiographer on staff. There's no call-out anymore. So our move is to make sure we have these services run on a truly 24-hour arrangement where we'll have a pharmacist in the case of pharmacy, we'll have a radiographer in the case of imaging studies, and we'll have a medical technologist in the case of laboratory services on site 24/7 to make sure that we could provide services on a 24-hour arrangement. I can say to you, it is not only the diagnostic group. Those of you who would have visited the hospital over the last year plus will know that the hospital is very, very tidy, it's clean. And what we've done, we've put a shift in place from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. And that shift, all it does is to clean our bathrooms, clean the elevators, clean the floors, replenish hand sanitizers. So when the public comes to receive services, they come to a facility that is clean and tidy for use. You're not going to come to the hospital at 8 o'clock in the morning and see somebody telling you to step aside with a slippery and wet floor sign. You're not going to see that again. When you come out for service at 8 o'clock in the morning, you come into a facility that is pristine, is clean, is tidy, and is ready to serve the public. This is another of the areas we've put in place to make sure that the hospital runs in a truly 24-hour operation. And we really expect that once we get the number of pharmacists in place, dispensing will be on at a minimum up to midnight, but certainly at best 24 hours.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Rejan Montour, community activist. I just firstly want to commend the organization's leadership for all the strides pushed forward and, of course, developing of the strategic focus. I think that is very commendable at this point. My question I want to ask with reference to mental health services, what does primary care look like for somebody, for example, a young person going through some sort of social ill? Is it that they can walk into the medical wellness center and seek psychological services, or they have to reference one of the polyclinics first and be referred into there? And also the cost attached to that, if that is possible to disclose that this time.
I think I should take my seat and let Dr. Charles and Sister Parrott answer that question. We interestingly raised that because as we speak now, both are attending a PAHO workshop to look at mental health services at the complex. Both Dr. Charles and Sister Parrott. So you have now information that is current, and so she could share that with you. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Parrott.
I was curious, the essentials and necessaries that you mentioned, can they not be bought at a sub-regional level rather than St. Lucia doing it on its own? And secondly, you must have investigated the reason for the 30% no-show. I think it's socio-cultural. Is there something a committee can do to reduce the percentage?
I think I better take my seat again. Let me deal with the first one the first question first, and then Dr. Charles will respond to the no-shows. There's what is called PPM, Pharmaceutical Procurement Program, which is an entity that purchases drugs and medical supplies for the entire OECS chain, right? The Central Procurement Unit in St. Lucia purchases from that entity. So the entity itself enjoys economies of scale by buying in bulk and is therefore able to bring the cost to a reasonable level. So all our OECS countries purchase their drugs and medical supply from that central agency called PPM. It's called Pharmaceutical Procurement, I think it's PPS, Pharmaceutical Procurement Services, is a facility for the OECS countries. And all our central procurement agencies in the OECS countries purchase their drugs and medical supplies from this entity. So that is able to keep the cost of drugs and medical supplies at a very low cost. So you bang on in terms of the approach does in fact exist. The problem is, if the central procurement agency are having problems with cash flows, for instance, or whatever internal problems they have, the entire public health system is compromised, which is what has put us in that position where the gentleman has asked that many times we have stock out of drugs and medical supplies. So we have had to go out there and use our limited resources to purchase some of those items from the same suppliers who have been pre-certified and make sure we have some buffer stocks on standby. So when on occasion the Central Procurement Agency doesn't have the drugs or supplies, or there are delays in supplying the drugs and medical supplies to us, we can then draw from our reserves and make that available to our patients. This is how we've sought to address that particular problem. Dr. Charles will address the question of the no-shows. We spent a lot of time today speaking about it, and she could prefer a response to you.
If I can just add regarding the use of PPS, an extremely important function in terms of the Central Procurement Service is vetting of the drugs. So they use labs out of Jamaica. There are lots of drugs on the market. There are lots of companies trying to sell us drugs cheaply as well. But how do we validate that this drug is safe, it's safely made, that if it says it has 60 milligrams of aspirin in it, it actually does have 60 milligrams of aspirin in it? That is a very costly venture to vet and to validate and to certify that a drug is safe and that it is delivering what it says it delivers. So if we procure independently as Millennium Heights Medical Complex, we're actually going to market in some instances with companies that we do not have validated information on. So I just wanted to share that as well. In terms of this is why PPS is so important, because we're pooling resources as the OECS, we can afford to do that kind of testing and validation of our drugs so we know what we're getting is truly what we were told we're purchasing. In terms of the no-shows, I think it's partly cultural, but we did have a discussion about it today. It's interesting, in Guyana, there was a program that was rolled out with text messaging, simple text messaging that costs nothing, that ensures that if you have an appointment, you get a text message every day for the entire week leading up to your appointment. So there's some simple things we can put in place. Currently, we do make the phone calls 24 hours, 48 hours before. But the other thing that Dr. James and I spoke about is we also need to look at how long it takes for you to get an appointment. If you go to a doctor in the private sector or the primary health and you've got a lump in your breast and you come to the hospital and they tell you that the wait for the next appointment for a surgeon to see you is 2 months, you may choose to access services privately, find the funds and access services privately. So we also are working to see how we can shorten our wait time for appointments, because I think that impacts why folks don't show up. They don't cancel it, they take the appointment for 2 months, but they source the service privately or otherwise in the interim and don't bother to show up because they've dealt with their issue. So we have to look at it holistically. There are multiple issues.
Right.
This will be our final question.
Mr. James, you said about when appointments and staff and the patient cancel appointments, we must try to keep our appointments. But it happens sometimes when we have appointments as patients, we go to the hospital and it's canceled and they never called us. What happens for that? Now, my second question is x-rays. You go for x-ray, you fracture or broken your elbow. When you call for your x-ray and your report, the x-ray comes, is your toe. What do we say for that? What is the answer for that? When you call them and you ask them, why I get so-and-so, they'll tell you, oh, hold on, I'm going to call you back, and they never call back. Sometimes you call how many times, they can't find the x-ray. 2-3 weeks, you can't find the x-ray. You keep calling them. They'll tell you, did I call you? Did you talk to me? Did you say this? I didn't look for it, or we can't find it yet. I'll call you 2-3 weeks and you're not getting no answer. What do we say for that? This is my question.
So those are real and practical issues that you've raised. The first so many cancellations, a conversation we had today as well. We must do better if for whatever reasons patients are canceled with their appointments. Things happen. Sometimes the doctor might work tonight and therefore has to come in to do his clinic tomorrow morning. Sometimes we have large amount of patients that they have to see on the wards first before they go to the clinics, right? And in some cases, the inefficiencies on our part. We just have too many patients to see. But is it right to now say to the person who has been waiting for the last 3 months for the clinic day, to say that your appointment is canceled, go rebook, and then you rebooked in January. In the meanwhile, you become a catastrophic situation has gotten worse, and then you come through A&E in a fairly serious condition. I thank you for bringing that to our attention, because that is an area that we must address. When on occasion that our servants have canceled appointments, whatever reason, we must find a way of making sure that those appointments are rescheduled in the soonest possible time and given, I would say, an express approach to having it done. It is not enough to just say, take this slip and go to the appointments area and get another appointment. It's not good enough. So that's my answer to it. I'm saying that it exists, it shouldn't happen, and we have to find a way of fixing that. The issue you've raised with the x-ray, if that happens, that has to be an error. You can't do an x-ray of the elbow and then you get a report on the toe. That has to be an error. Unfortunately, in our setting, errors do in fact take place. we're hoping that the pursuit of hospital accreditation will strengthen clinical practice guidelines and strengthen our operations to minimize errors. There are people that run systems, people operating systems. And as long as you have humans being part of operating a system, errors are likely to occur. What we try to do on a daily basis is try to minimize those errors. The issue you have raised should really be lodged as a complaint. We pick that up in our profile as what we call a risk event, or what might be considered to be a near miss. Those are what I would call learning opportunities so that we could take corrective actions so that it doesn't happen again. These are matters you have to escalate to us. We must know and log it as an incident. The analogy I would like to bring to you in your particular case, you have a tap at home that is just dripping. You're really taking it on. It's a drip. And then one day you come home and then the entire place is flooded, and it's flooded because of a washer. Those are the issues you have to report to us. It hasn't led to a catastrophic situation, but you have to bring it to our attention so we could find out what went wrong, learn from it, and make sure there's not a flood taking place. And this is one of the messages that I would like to say to everyone, that we do in fact have a formal complaints arrangement where persons who have concerns, I call it the 3 C's, concerns, clarifications, or commendations. 3 C's. Write into us, and certainly we'd like to hear from you as well. So thanks for bringing your concerns. The 2 issues are cancellations of outpatient clinics, and secondly, taking steps to mitigate errors across the hospital. But when they do in fact occur as near misses, we must learn from them, and you must feel empowered to lodge a complaint so we could then take on board what has happened and use it as a learning experience to try to mitigate and prevent it from occurring. All right, thank you.
Good evening. I want to commend the board and management of Millennium Heights Medical Complex for their focus, for the systems that they have put in place to ensure better service to the public. I would like to suggest that in order to enhance the effectiveness of all of these systems, is that we institute or develop some customer service training for staff, because that is one of the areas, I think that would prevent you from achieving the goals set by all your strategies and systems. Because a lot of the complaints that you get, a lot of people don't know what is happening, what you've just described. But all they know is how they are treated when they get into OKU, right? So I think in order to enhance and to make what you have put in place more effective is to augment it with some customer service training at all levels.
Thank you very much. Good suggestion, we'll take on board. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end. I would like you to join me in giving a round of applause to our chairperson who's here today. I know you greatly appreciate her presence and the other members of the board, as well as our management team. Our senior management team is here. So thank you very much for attending. We now call on Ms. Alcide, who will give the vote of thanks, and we shall close for the evening.
Good evening, everyone. At this time, we want to thank you. So on behalf of the Millennium Heights Medical Complex, we want to thank you for joining us here today. Those of you online, we want to thank you as well. Our next town hall meeting, I believe, is scheduled for next week, Tuesday, the 24th of October at the Castries City Council. So once again, thank you. Get home safe and have a good night. Thank you.